Hello, this is David Starr. Welcome back to the Mastering the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace series. In this module, we'll be looking at the SaaS Fulfillment API, and we'll spend most of our time in demo and actually working with the API. If you haven't already watched the module in this series entitled SaaS Offer Technical Overview, you might want to consider it. It's a good primer for this module. We'll have a very quick overview of what you can do with the API before jumping into a demo that will carry us through the rest of the module. So what can you do with this API? Let's see. First of all, here's a link to the documentation of the API we're going to be working with. Note it's aka.ms/SaaS-API2. This is the second version of that API, and the first version is deprecated. So what can we do with this API? You can tell by all of the actions on this screen that it's very subscription focused, because that's what we want to work with. Customer subscriptions to our products. So we get to do things with customer subscriptions like resolve one, that is to say, gain access to one. We get to activate a subscription if it's in an inactive state. We can list them all, we can get a specific subscription, cancel one even, and there are more operations, as we'll see, that we can do using this SaaS Fulfillment API. Now there are a few things that we need to have in place in order to use this API as we'll be showing it. First of all, you have to have a SaaS application already installed, and it has to have a landing page associated with it. If you're not familiar with this, there are other videos in this series that talk about installing a SaaS application. Might be a good thing to take a look at as well. Also, you wouldn't have a landing page without an application registration for it. So we need an application registration, and that needs to be in place for the landing page so that we can use that application registration almost as an entry point into the API. For more about application registrations, follow this link, aka.ms/app-registration. It's worthy of note that the application registration itself has a secret attached to it, one or more. You can add your own secrets, and with the secret, we are able to connect to Azure Active Directory, as we'll see in just a moment when we exercise the API. Now the SaaS offer is configured in Partner Center, and it has to at least be in the preview stage of publication. That's where it says Publisher Sign Off. And the reason for this is once your SaaS application is in preview or Publisher Sign Off stage, you can test with it just by clicking this link, and you can go through the purchase process. That's what we're going to do to get started. Now that we're done with the preliminaries, it's time to jump into seeing how this all works. Here you see I'm starting on my SaaS subscription management page. Now I can get to this page simply by typing SaaS in my search bar up at the top of the Azure portal and selecting SaaS. It brings me right to this page. You can also see that I've made 5 SaaS purchases thus far, and as you may imagine, we're going to make another one. So to do so, we will head over to Partner Center, where we have gotten our offer all the way to the publisher sign-off stage. That's here, where we could click go live, but what we want to do is go into some testing. So we're going to actually be able to mock purchase our SaaS products. So let's do that by clicking on Azure Portal Preview, which takes us to a view wherein we can actually purchase our offer, okay? And we have multiple plans here. We are invited to a private plan, but in this case, we're going to just select Silver. So we're gonna sign up for the Silver plan. We'll hit Set Up and Subscribe, and we'll give it a new resource group of SaaS Sample Purchase 06. This fits with our naming convention we were using earlier. We'll use the same name for our SaaS application itself. We'll go ahead and subscribe to this SaaS offer, which will take just a moment. Great, it looks like our SaaS subscription has gone through and completed properly. Now I could come here to configure the account. This would take me to the landing page for this particular offer, but we're not quite ready to go there yet. Instead, let's head back over to our SaaS management page and have a look at our new purchase. Note it's in the pending configuration status. That's its current status. It's pending configuration. It's waiting for the customer, that is me, to go ahead and click on that configure account button. I can do that if I select the SaaS offer and go to configure account now. Again, this will take us to the landing page. Now, we're not quite ready to do that. Instead, let's jump over to our tool that we're going to use for exercising the API. We're going to use Postman. Now, most people are familiar with Postman and what it does, but if you're not, it's a simple tool that allows us to make requests and read responses from APIs. We're going to do that with the SaaS Fulfillment API. Now, one thing about Postman I'll mention before we get started is that I can have something called an environment, and it's like environmental variables that it holds. So within this environment, you can see that I've set up certain values already: tenant ID, subscription ID, etc. Now, those will be used when we open a request. So this is a request. In this case, it's a post action to an endpoint that is an OAuth 2 endpoint. We're going to be passing in our tenant ID, which is an environmental variable, along with our client ID and our client secret. Remember I said we were going to need an app registration. Well, this is what we get from our app registration. We get its identity, its client ID, and we get a client secret. We'll go ahead and hit send and get back from that an access token. It's a token of type bearer, and this happens to be a JWT or JOT token. We can validate that by hopping out to a new page. Let's go to jwt.io, which gives us the ability to paste in our JOT and look at the payload that it carries. In this case, one thing that's interesting is looking at the issuer, which happens to be stswindows.net / the identity of your tenant. And you can see that that tenant ID is also repeated down here under TID, tenant ID. This is the subscription identity currently being used, and there's other really great information inside this JOT's payload. Let's jump back over to Postman. Now, one thing about this particular request is I've added a couple of tests to the Postman script, and these two lines up here are important. What it's doing is simply taking the JSON that we see at the bottom, and it is taking the access token property of that JSON response and storing it in an environmental variable called access token, which we can see up here under access token. You can see that that JOT has been placed into that access token. With that, the next thing a landing page would likely want to do is resolve a subscription. We've logged into Azure Active Directory. We have our access token. Now we want to actually get the purchase identity token or marketplace token off of the URL query string produced when going to our landing page. So let's pop back over to our Azure portal. Here we are in our Azure portal. I'll go ahead and click configure account now, which will take us to our SaaS applications landing page. Notice that after logging me in, it presents a lot of information about me and about the subscription that I'm trying to purchase. Now, how did it get this subscription information? It did so by resolving this subscription. How is that done? Well, this token that gets passed on the query string to the landing page, we're going to copy that out and we'll go to a URL decoder so that we can paste in that URL encoded line and come out with a proper token. Remember, this is our purchase identity token, or in the case of Postman, Postman calls it the marketplace token. So we're going to go into our environmental variables. We'll find our marketplace token, edit it, get rid of the old one, and put in our new one. Great. Now we should be able to issue the request to resolve this subscription. And what we got back was a lot of detail about this subscription. You can see that it's a silver plan, and you can see the name of the subscription that we created, the offer ID, etc. You can also see its current status, which is pending fulfillment start. That is to say, the customer has not yet begun the fulfillment process, if you will. The plan ID, as we said, is currently silver, and we can use this information that's come back in our REST API to show information on the landing page. Let's jump all the way to the top of our JSON response, and you'll see this GUID here for ID. This is our subscription's identity. So we can actually get that subscription by calling this endpoint and passing our subscription ID. When we resolved our subscription, it actually inserted the subscription ID into the environmental variables, just as I did with that test that inserted our access token. So we don't even have to worry about holding on to that subscription ID anymore. It's just in our environmental variables for Postman. So I'll go ahead and send this request, which will get information about our subscription. So at this point, we're able to see again that it's pending fulfillment start. Let's go ahead and activate our subscription. We can do so by calling the activate endpoint of the SaaS API. And before we do that, let's inspect the body. The body contains the plan ID that we want to activate for this particular customer. So for this subscription, this is the plan that we're going to go ahead and activate. I'll hit send, and from that I get back status 200. Everything looks good. We can go back to get a subscription, send that request again, and notice that we've gone from pending fulfillment to subscribed as our status. Another thing we can do is get all of our subscriptions back in a list. And we do that, and we see immediately that the first subscription is not the one we just put in. Let's find that one. We'll collapse that subscription. This one's name also not the one we're after. There's subscription purchase 1. Remember, ours was 6. So what do we have to do to get that next set of subscriptions? Well, if we want to effectively paginate through all of these subscriptions, we use this next link URL, hit send on it, and we get the next set of subscriptions. Here's ours, SaaS sample purchase 6. And let's go ahead and follow into the next link that came back with just our subscription. We'll paste it in up here, follow it. You can see there are more subscriptions that are being returned. We'll go ahead and continue to follow that next link to its natural conclusion, which it looks like there are still some more. Subscriptions to look at. And finally, we got to the end where our subscriptions returned only one last subscription. There is no next link, and we know we've come to the end of all of our subscriptions. Now let's say we want to list the available plans for the particular subscription that's been made. We can do that by looking at the list available plans endpoint. We'll hit send on that and get back the plan ID of silver. This is the one we're subscribed to now. You can see that there's a gold plan, a platinum plan, and a private plan. Now, what we'd like to do now is change plans for a specific subscription. If we pop back over to our Azure portal, we can see that we have the silver plan here. If I hit refresh, I'm able to click this link, change plan. So I can see the different plans that are available to me. Currently on the silver plan, and I'd like to go to the gold plan. Let's go ahead and hit change plan. Now, this activity has to be initiated by the customer. So we'll hit change plan, and this creates an operation. An operation is something we can act on, as we'll see in just a moment. Notice the plan is still silver. The publisher hasn't yet approved the change to gold. So let's go do that. Here we are back in Postman, and what we'd like to see are any outstanding operations for our current subscription. So we call the Operations API, which we can see there. There's our operation, and this lets us know that the customer wants to do something. Now, if we check our records, we should know that our current plan for this customer is silver, and they want to go to gold. So how do we enable this? There might be some work that we have to do behind the scenes, manually upgrading them or such, but let's assume that's all been done, or it's an automated process as soon as we see this operation come in. The next thing we'll do is we'll patch this operation status, and we'll patch it to success. Now, it could be success or failure, but we're going to patch this operation, and I'm going to go back, get the operations identity. Here we go. Come back over to our patch operation, and I'm just going to drop it in where this variable would normally go. Now, when we do this, we're going to submit the body of status success. Could be a success or a failure. Let's go ahead and click success. We got a 200 back, you'll notice. And so now if we go back to get all operations, remember we had this one operation outstanding before. We no longer have any outstanding operations. And by that same logic, if we check it just for this subscription has no outstanding operations. Great. So if we check our operation status for the operation ID that we had a few moments ago, we can still see this operation, but we can see that the status is that it succeeded, and the action was change plan. The plan ID is now gold. That's really a trip all the way through the Fulfillment API. Different things you can do with subscriptions. We saw how to resolve a subscription, activate one, retrieve one when we want to inspect it. We saw that we could look at all subscriptions to our offer if we'd like. And finally, we come to cancel subscription. And we got a 202 back, which tells us that it was accepted, but a long-running process is now going on in the background on the server side. And that makes sense because when we come over to our SaaS dashboard and hit refresh, notice that our plan is still marked as subscribed. We can actually go back to all of our SaaS offers, and we'll see that this plan is subscribed. We're waiting for it to turn to unsubscribed, which it will because we canceled the subscription by using the delete operation of our REST API. Well, we talked a bit about what you can accomplish with the SaaS Fulfillment API, quite a bit actually, and then we jumped right in and actually worked with the API using Postman. Again, here's a link to the documentation for this SaaS Fulfillment API should you want to follow up and read through the Microsoft Docs on this service. Finally, I want to thank you for joining me for this module in the Mastering the Microsoft Commercial Marketplace series. Hopefully this video is helping you in your SaaS offer onboarding process. Check out our other videos and labs in this series at the URL shown here.